Referencing.
Blood out there, Nicole? Close look.
Good morning. This is the time and place set for the monthly meeting of the Nevada Taxi Cab Authority Board. It is Thursday, November 18th, 2021, and the hour is shortly after 10:33 a.m. The record should reflect that all members of the board are present. Member Thompson, Member Rodriguez, Member Sutherland, and Member Reeser. Vice Chairman Thompson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary Moran, has this meeting been duly posted in accordance with the open meeting law?
Yes.
Thank you. The record should also reflect that Acting Administrator Decker is with us.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Welcome to members of the industry and staff. The first item of official business is the taking of public comment pursuant to Nevada statute. This is a time set for any member of the public or the industry who wishes to bring any matters within the jurisdiction of the board to our attention, understanding that no action may be taken. Is there any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we will proceed to agenda item 3, which is the interview of applicants for the taxi cab administrator position. Administrator Decker, is there any kind of preliminary information you would want to provide to the board before we commence?
There is one item, Mr. Chair. The 11 a.m. Candidate, German Lazo, has withdrawn.
Okay.
And although he is included on the agenda, he will not be appearing. When we get to item number 4, I might suggest some further items, but
okay.
I don't need to say that.
So I believe Mr. Albertson is present. Mr. Albertson, would you mind coming to and having a seat with us?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
And could you please state your full name for the record, please?
Yes, Brian Albertson.
Good morning, Mr. Albertson. We appreciate your application. The members of the board are going to ask some questions. We've had the benefit of your resume and the submission you made to the Department of Business and Industry. And I'm going to start off with the first question and ask you to give us a 3-minute elevator speech on why you should be selected the administrator.
Okay. I have a pretty varied background that I think could really help this out. Started in public relations, started athletic media relations is where I started, bounced around different colleges, graduated from Indiana University. Ended up at UNLV and kind of fell in love with the city and just never wanted to leave. I spent a few years there, but I had done probably about 7 or 8 years in athletic media relations, working all day and all night in sports. I got to this weird sort of point where I just didn't want overtime. I didn't want extra innings, but I wanted to keep doing PR. So I ended up moving over to the casinos, which, you know, is kind of an ancillary thing with the Taxi Cab Authority. So between the public relations, casino, and the law enforcement that I have, But I was over at the Palms Casino for a little while, and I really enjoyed that, but it didn't really, at some point it didn't feel like a real job because of the way that their public relations are handled. It was all about Disney stars turning 21 and balancing fame, and I wanted something that felt more real. And I may, in some kind of funny way, have overreached going from Disney stars to terrorism and espionage, but that's what I did. Went over to TSA for a little bit, so I'm not ignorant to the notion of mass transit and safety of people and patrons. I was over there for a little while because I knew how long getting into the FBI would take, and I wanted to start my government work while I waited for the process to play out. And I was there. It took a few years before the Bureau was able to get me in, hire me. Briefly over in Salt Lake City, cried and cried because I love Vegas so much that they finally let me back here. I was on the terrorism espionage squad for about 12 years. And you serve at the needs of the Bureau. They wanted me at one point to move to Washington, D.C., and I didn't really want to. I was kind of at a point where I was trying to think about the next challenge, having done what I was doing on that squad for a long time. And with the Bureau, you either move up or you move down. They don't really like you to stay in the same spot. There are about 270 embassies and ambassador residences in Washington, D.C., so what I do is particularly more intense, but I'll take it as a compliment that they wanted me to go there, but I didn't want to. My wife is an attorney in town. She has her own practice, and I didn't want her to close that practice down and move across the country to a place where she's not licensed. So retired from the FBI, took a little time to figure out what I wanted to do, probably not on that resume. I've since taken a job helping out the Sands Corporation, Venetian Palazzo, with some big picture threat terrorism thinking. Been there a few months, but this particular job it's a better job, it's more challenging, more interesting, so this is where my interests lie.
Member Thompson.
Which of your leadership positions prepared you best for this administrative job?
I was definitely, what I was doing at the FBI, I rather quickly became an assistant team leader and acting team leader a number of times when we would lose people. So as acting team leader, we had a couple squads of 8 people that I would be, running the day-to-day operations of. That included some disciplinary stuff, but it was also mentoring, bringing new people, deciding day-to-day business, what are we going to work that day, how are we going to work it, changing those schedules. So the FBI, especially towards the end, and the acting team leader position is where my kind of leadership qualities were able to cultivate those and shine.
So you work with the JTTF?
Yes, yeah, we work with them regularly on different cases. Like about half, it's about a 50-50 split between the terrorism and the espionage. Our squad touched a few other things. We kind of balance, we kind of decide on a daily basis what to work based on threat bands. You have a national threat band, which puts terrorism, and then espionage number 2. You have a local threat band, which puts the opioid epidemic at the top. And so we would try, even though our squad was created for terrorism and espionage, based on kind of day-to-day expectations and caseload, we could help out and do some of the medical fraud and kind of deal with that local threat band. And those were decisions as acting team leader, sometimes assistant team leader, when the boss isn't around, I have to make those decisions about what cases that hold a precedent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
What do you consider the biggest public safety challenges for an agency like the Authority, and how will you address these challenges?
As an outsider, it's difficult to say. I mean, passenger safety is paramount, and coming kind of from that, about a few years with the TSA, you understand that it is kind of your customer safety that's the paramount. I hear different things from afar about what the problems are. There's a perception of the long hauling still. I'd like to think that I see efforts to curtail that, but even just if it's not physical safety, it's the financial safety, of your passengers, so to speak, that is a problem. And like I said, it could just be perception now and not an actual physical problem, but I hear it. I'm at a casino every day and I talk to people, and not even having any idea that I'm going to be here today, discussions come up about long haul. And
Explain long hauling.
that's, I'm sure you know, where you take a passenger on a longer ride than you need to
Okay.
escalate the charge. And you hop on the 15, go through the tunnel specifically, I think. We'll add like about a $10 charge to everyone's ride when you're taking them to a strict location.
Okay, and how will you address those challenges?
That's difficult to say. I don't know what's still currently being implemented. I'm to some extent an outsider, but I like that there were signs put up. I'm aware that there were signs put up at the airport to discourage that, and people have a sense of what a ride should cost from one location to another. I don't know to what extent enforcement is being used to stop cabs from entering the tunnel to take them on that longer route. Do you enforce it that way by putting investigators and looking for them, that kind of surveillance, the kind of surveillance that I'm used to, and just waiting for that to happen and citing them, and this kind of balanced looking for that kind of crime, if we want to call it a crime, to take place, and punishing it and making it a regular thing and an actual deterrent from it. I don't know if that's happening. I hope it is. Like I said, it could, from afar, it's a perception that I know you guys are aware of and have attempted to curtail. I hope it's working.
Thank you.
Brian, could you walk us through instances where you've changed or improved an organization's work culture?
Culture? There are things that I've done locally and nationally even. Locally, we have 3 squads of covert operatives that have to work in the airport regularly. And we were having trouble working with the TSA and Department of Aviation to get on property covertly and stay covert and get what we had to do done. And so using the contacts that I was lucky to have at TSA, I was able to start kind of a program that first became a beta test, so to speak, of giving us badges. Because historically we had to sign in as though we were just a flying agent that was armed. And you'd sign in and people would say hi, and then they would, at some point, they would wonder why you're signing in to go into the secure area. So I worked really closely with them for a long time. There was some trust issues, this is our secure area. But we were able to create a program where now all of our covert operatives have badges at the airport, so they can kind of move freely in and out to get our jobs done and work our cases properly without, like, there was one day we were going in and they were like, oh, hey, you guys are with the FBI. And it's like, the subject that we're working covertly is putting his shoes in the bin. And it's like, thanks. So that was we were working, but unfortunately, that was the trigger for like, this can't happen again. Now you understand our problem. And so we were able to implement a way that made it easier for years now for covert operatives and all agents to get in and out of that secure area easily. Another one that I dealt with that kind of I think became kind of more national is covert operatives dealing with jury selection. I had it twice, and the second time I was waiting for my voir dire to take place, the jury's questioning, and there was a person also on the jury panel that worked with someone that I had an open case on. So I didn't want to sit there and say, yeah, I work for the FBI, blah, 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 blah. And then that guy see me sitting in his parking lot one day, waiting for his coworker to come out and figure out all of his day-to-day activities and such. So I kind of created SOP for all covert employees on how to handle jury selection, how to talk to bailiffs and judges on getting their voir dire done in private, sealing the records after we're done, funneling the money from state courts over to federal Department of Justice funds and stuff like that. So created a real thing that should go around to all field offices on making that part of our jobs a lot easier. there are a couple times that I've tried to really, taken on a little special project to make things better for us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Member Thompson.
Okay, I've got a question that, if someone had asked me that in trying to get a career job, I would scratch my head. I'm going to ask you anyway.
Okay.
What career situations presented a unique challenge to you that made you think out of the box solutions? That's a complicated question if you really think about it. But can you come up with a description of that?
Ask me one more time if you will.
Okay.
Because as you said, it's complicated.
It
I
is.
think it's best to answer it. And to be honest, there's a lot of
Yeah.
times that there are things that roll around in my head that I want to tell you, but am under.
Well, it would occur to me like that too. What career challenges presented a unique situation for which you thought out of the box solutions? I guess unusual solutions or something that was not standard. If you're in the FBI, it's a strong bureaucracy. And so there are often answers to any questions that pop up.
Yeah.
So that's not thinking out of the box. That's just reaching into the bureaucracy and finding a solution.
I have kind of one that happened as a result early on, a learning moment, so to speak.
Okay.
Early on in the FBI, I have to speak very generically. I'm under secrecy orders from my job. We were working a number of people who wanted to do something terrible. They wanted to buy and sell drugs to bring in their associates from another country to bomb Nellis Air Force Base. And we had a source that we were working that was helping us to help them buy and sell the drugs. And that was going to be kind of our trigger to stop them. And in the end, the source bought the drugs. And that we were still able to stop this, obviously. There's no Venmo bombing at Nellis Air Force Base.
Yeah.
But we learned an important lesson about vetting our sources differently. So now one of the things we did, and the very first one, we were working with an agency contact, and we had a source that we wanted to do some action later on. And so we decided from now on, we're going to kind of test our sources and give them the most mundane, silly kind of actions to perform. I want you to go to the Treasure Island gift shop, buy a t-shirt, and then at exactly 10 o'clock, I want you over at the Planet Hollywood Mall and hand it to a guy waiting here in a red shirt. And then we're going to surveil that guy all day long, and we're going to see if he buys the shirt when he's supposed to buy the shirt. Did he only buy the shirt? When did he get to Treasure Island? When did he follow through on just that simple mundane task? And we'll task that guy a couple, maybe 2-3 times with just silliness that means nothing. He might think it's really important, You're going to go to this corner, he handed this, I want you to perform 3 or 4 other actions before we end it, and we're going to see if you can perform these things the way you're told. And that became kind of how we dealt with some of our sources leading into, fully trusting and counting on them to perform a specific task.
Well, that's interesting. It's actually a better answer than I would have come up with being asked that question.
Thanks.
So, yeah, thank you for that.
Of course.
Mr. Albertson, what's been your biggest career disappointment so far?
To some extent, it was that, but that became the case got a lot harder and a lot longer after that source messed that up. Disappointment. Not terribly disappointed with too much. I've enjoyed my careers. The media relations was great. TSA was fine. I found that they promoted a lot of military to supervisory positions, and the only thing I didn't enjoy a military mindset on when you're managing civilian workforce. And in a generic kind of exaggerated way, take the hill and don't ask why doesn't work for a civilian workforce. It didn't work for me. So when I finally, even though maybe I was kind of using TSA a little bit to get what I wanted with the Bureau, to get into the Bureau, I didn't mind leaving that job. And because morale means a lot to me, and as a leader, transparency as much as I can, and participation as much as I can with the people around me has always been kind of my leadership kind of style. And so that kind of, like I mentioned, like a military mindset on a civilian staff didn't work for me. And so that's the only job that I really ever held that really felt a lot of disappointment from day to day. And beyond that, I've always been pretty happy where I work. The work was always good. And that's kind of the best answer I have for that particular question.
Brian, what's your view of using progressive discipline in personnel matters? And in what situations do you believe this is a useful HR tool?
Progressive discipline?
Yes.
What do you mean by that exactly? So,
Well, you've worked in a number of government situations. You're applying to come into another one. There is a process of disciplining employees.
yeah.
And every one of those situations has a different progression of what's the initial to the point of termination.
Yeah, I've had a couple times where I participated in that, a couple times have led to dismissals. And there are suitability standards where I like to give people chances, and I like to understand, their side of things. And so, yes, there are, you talk to people, you have to. You work with HR, you document as much as you can, you discuss failings, and if it leads to suspensions at first and then termination, does it lead to recurring training? Does it lead to kind of a backwards kind of step with mentoring? I have no problem with that. I don't want to terminate anybody. There have been a couple instances where we've had suitability standards where someone won't take responsibility for their actions. And that becomes a problem, especially with the Bureau mindset. There, you do not lie, you just kind of take ownership of what's happening, and then we'll always work with you to try and figure out the best way around it. We've also had security incidents. Those are less forgivable. If you lose things that are important, if you are found with a confidential document, we decide how egregious that offense is and decide whether it's something that the culmination of those offenses just leads to termination. You're just too risky to have here. Sorry, there isn't really another chance for you. But I'd like to give people second chances, depending on the instance, a third chance. But it's okay to let people go. Some people aren't meant to do certain things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Albertson, what's the most important skill set for a leader in a law enforcement agency?
It's that honesty and integrity, and like I mentioned, there's no room for trying to word it best. Like I mentioned, I want to include people in as many decisions as I can. I have no problem making the final decision. I want to talk to the support people, the people that it affects and that will carry it out. I want to talk to them and to understand that there may be a hurdle I'm unaware of on that operational side if I'm not participating in it. And it's absolutely the communication, that up and down communication is essential for me in a leadership position. So that transparency is important as much as I can allow it. That's kind of because like I mentioned, morale is paramount to me. I've been in places where morale is terrible, and I've seen the effects of it. So it is my number one goal to keep kind of the staff happy and let them kind of, I empower them and I trust them until they fail me. That's earning trust kind of feels slow to me. And so I want to trust you. You're in a position, you've been put in a position, even if it's before I got here, you've been put into a position because you've earned it, and I'm going to let you kind of thrive in it. And to some extent, I like to think that I work for you, even if I am your boss. And my job is to kind of create opportunities for your success. And that's, kind of getting back again, kind of regurgitating a bit of what I mentioned about my kind of leadership mindset. I hope that helps to answer the question a little bit for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Thompson.
Okay, I've got a question that's dear to my heart.
Uh-oh.
No, it's important to the taxi industry.
All right.
And the question is, what is the most challenging aspect or situation that's facing the taxi industry today? Well, let me start here. With the board's permission, I'll have a little digression. The early on in the 50s, the audience knows this, there was intense competition among the taxi industry involving guns, knives, other sharp objects. And that's actually why the taxi authority was created, to kind of mitigate that. And it worked. I've had the pleasure of talking to a lot of the leaders in the taxi industry, and they are invariably intelligent and reasonable people, mostly. And so that's gone. No, I really like them, I do.
Yeah.
And I wish them the best. And that's why this is an important question to me.
Okay.
What do you think is the most challenging problem facing them today?
Facing the authority as a whole?
No, not the authority, the taxi industry.
The taxi industry.
Yes.
Okay. When I think about the future of the taxi industry, I think about technology first. I early adopt as much as I can. I love technology. One of my favorite places to be is the main floor of the Consumer Electronics Show. I don't know if I'll define myself as a futurist, but autonomous driving is something that has to be thought about, and there are upsides and downsides, obviously, to autonomous driving. There's possibly, arguably, an uptick in safety for autonomous driving, and there's also a diminishing, a downtick in workforce if you have autonomous driving. That seems to be a future that has to be considered. Autonomous driving negates long hauling because the car is going to know the fastest way to get there. You don't put that human element of abuse into that situation. I think if I remember a news story, there's already, have you been approached by an autonomous driving taxi kind of something that's happening? Has that happened, or maybe you don't even want to speak?
Yeah.
Possibly. So the future problem is that it's a diminishing human workforce, possibly. And how do you deal with that? Combined with the more immediate threat of ride-share companies who state they have found it's just to an extent, they have found a way to curtail long hauling because I know before the car shows up, it's $25 to get here. To some extent, I don't care how you get there then. It's still just $25. And so that kind of battle, either it's the communication that we set forth to indicate that our rates are competitive or better than a ride-share surge price, or that we are safer than a employee workforce, there are ways to discuss, you know, that your safety is going to be better with the taxi cab authority, and it's going to be better financially, but there are immediate problems and there are much farther out problems that have to be discussed. And there are things, you know, just from afar, again, you know, that occurred to me, especially over the last, you know, couple days preparing, thinking about this particular discussion we have today. So,
Okay, that's a fair answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's the
did I
the
get,
right answer.
may not have got
That's-
close to what you wanted, or?
I don't even know what my answer would be.
Okay.
I know that it's an important question, and I appreciate your answering it in that fashion.
Okay.
Mr.
So,
Albertson.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Albertson, if you were selected to be the administrator, what would be your 3 priorities for providing leadership?
Providing leadership, I want to understand who I oversee, talk to everyone as quickly. If possible, I'm a fan of individualized talk, you know, discussions to find out the climate and expectations and challenges that I would be facing. I have ideas, and I want to find out, like I said, long haul perception. I want to know from everybody, even individually, so that they feel like they can speak freely. What is the perception? What's being done? What's working? What's not working? What are some things that I don't know about that are problems? Are there problems with cabs going into maybe low-income neighborhoods and they avoid it somehow, and now you have a sector of business that's not being taken care of? Are these problems? Give me ideas. You've been here longer than I have. I want open discussions with everyone about challenges and ideas, you know, and I want, like I said, it's that transparency and the participation as much as I can get it from everybody and that's willing to discuss with me those things. That's not sure.
Great. Thank you very much. We appreciate your participation in the interview, and of course, you can watch the deliberations or not, as you please.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I don't know
You have
if
anything?
anybody's explained to you the process. And
I have not, no.
So you're interviewing publicly today in front of the board, so will each candidate. The candidates will not be able to observe or participate in the others' interviews. At some point, the board will deliberate, at which time you and any other candidate will be able to be in the room and observe. The board will decide 3 names that get sent to the Director of Business and Industry, and the Director of Business and Industry will have the option to interview those 3 candidates again, or make a selection, or however he decides to deliberate, pick the person who will be the next administrator, and that's the process. So that's what happens subsequent to your interview today. I would just tell you that for your own edification, the deliberations today may not be because we've had a candidate withdraw, and we have a remote interview scheduled for tomorrow, published in an agenda.
Okay.
That the deliberations, subject to the board's approval, may or may not occur until tomorrow. So you're welcome to look on the website and tune in to tomorrow's meeting remotely and observe those deliberations if they don't happen today.
Okay, I appreciate that. I don't know if this is a moment where I could ask a question, if anybody would speak to it. I'm kind of curious what maybe you consider the biggest hurdle for this position, the biggest problem facing the authority right now, whether it's something that you even want to discuss today, or this is not the forum for that.
Well, it is not the forum for us to discuss it on this agenda item.
Okay.
Because that goes to a type of deliberation, and this agenda item is not scheduled, is not noticed for that deliberation. That's agenda item 4. So
Okay.
you can listen to us when we get to deliberation.
Okay.
Today and tomorrow, and that will be the opportunity for board members to express whether they think a candidate is going to be able to address what that board member thinks is an issue.
Okay.
Understood, appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one follow-up question.
Yes.
I suppose I would present to you that my role in this, other than to observe, would be to possibly clarify any resume items that I might perceive as being confusing to the board so that you don't have to because you've got a set list of questions. Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question?
No, I do not.
Okay. Mr. Albertson, can you describe to myself, the board, and the public the difference between an investigative specialist and a special agent? Is the investigative specialist a sworn position? And if so, or either way, does it manage sworn agents at the FBI?
The investigative specialist is it's a professional staff position. We support agents. We do mostly surveillance and document everything that we see. In Las Vegas, we operate on 3 teams, 2 unarmed, 1 armed. Trying to tell you as much as I can about the position. But no, they're not special agents. We go to Quantico. We have a different set, some crossover curriculum, but it's not the same. But we are in Quantico doing our training there, and it is mostly surveillance. And we are sworn officers. We're badged, some armed, some not, because to some extent we don't participate in arrests. The unarmed don't participate in arrests because they want to keep them available. If we were to arrest you for example, I basically not literally point at you, say arrest you, and now maybe I want to see how you react to that. And so that frees up that squad to remain available and for that kind of job.
So you said it is a sworn position.
I think so, and mine it depends how what you just define as sworn, but
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No. Great. Thank you very much.
yes, thank you guys. Appreciate the time.
Given the withdrawal of Mr. Lazo, and that our next interviewee is set for 11:30, we're going to stand in recess for about 20 minutes till 11:30, because the open meeting law notice set specific times, and also this third candidate was given a specific time to be available by WebEx. So we'll be in recess, and when we come back on, Secretary Moran, you can just go ahead and bring WebEx up at that time. Thank you. We'll be off the record.
You want to smash the gavel?
Nancy, can you make those copies of this?
I'm not a gavel.
It's more of a fist pound.
Make more copies of this?
The last time I used a gavel was when I was president of my undergraduate. This is a legendary thing in Cal State Fullerton.
Cal State Fullerton.
Yeah.
I went to Troy High School.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I was president of Delta Chi, and the last time I used a gavel was to throw out my
I just said okay.
when he got cut from the baseball team. He was our dream. He was gonna be a pro ball player. Finally have something.
Fullerton has a great baseball team.
Yeah, he does have great baseball.
Yeah. In fact, Dan, you told me this years ago. It was he considered a farm team for the California Angels.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Campus has grown so much. It's outside there the other day.
He's checking on the cameras.
Are we only recording audio?
No?
Are we only recording audio anyway?
Are we only recording audio?
No, it's,
We're not on yet.
The video is being recorded also? Okay.
there we go.
We're back on the record then? Thank you. We're on to agenda item 4, which is our deliberation and selection of applicants submitted to the Director of the Business and Industry pursuant to NRS 706.882 subsection 1. I will bring it back to the board with my following suggestion. The statute requires that we send 3 names. At this point, we have 3 candidates. I would suggest, given we have another candidate to hear from tomorrow, that we postpone any deliberations in this matter till tomorrow, so that we can just do it in one shot, essentially. To that end, though, I think it's important to share my, not anybody else's, interpretation of the statute, which is while we are required to send 3 names, the statute is silent as to what else we send along with those 3 names. And that in thinking about getting ready for deliberations tomorrow, we each give some consideration to what I'm going to recommend, and that is that we rank these folks first, second, third choice, so that the director has some sense of our views on the candidates' bona fides. Just sending the 3 names, I don't know, is necessarily helpful when you only have 3 names. So that's my suggestion. There may be other things that board members want to discuss tomorrow on and during the deliberations, and I'm not trying to shut those down. I just want everybody to have to give some thought to a ranking approach tomorrow. But I open it up if there's anything else board members want to speak to right now in preparation for tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Don Soderberg, you've answered a question that I was thinking pretty much since it started. If we have to send 3 and there are only 3, what were we doing? So ranking these individuals, although it's not always the most fun thing to do, I think is necessary. I think we have the obligation to give Director Reynolds our thoughts. We'll have a record to look at how these individuals have answered these questions, and at the end of the day, he will make his decision. And as much as we can give him to assist in that situation, we're doing our job.
Concur. Anything else? Yeah, and I'll just respond. Appreciate that, Member Soderberg. I think the other part of this is the ranking process will allow the director to know our thinking on whether he should reopen recruitment or not. I mean, that's one of the options he would have, but I think the ranking will edify and assist him. So with that, I would conclude agenda item 4, and we'll take that up again tomorrow, unless Mr. Decker, you have anything else on agenda item 4?
I do not. Well said.
Brings us to agenda item 5, industry discussion. We'd be happy to hear, well, first of all, Mr. Decker, do you have anything on this agenda item that we should set the table on?
I do not, and I would welcome any board input. However, because it is an industry discussion agenda, I would throw it to the industry if they haven't.
Concur. So we would invite any member of the industry that has any information they would like to bring to our attention to do so, either on the agenda items we've already addressed or something else. Seeing nobody coming to the table real quickly, I'm going to raise something under this agenda item for my colleagues' consideration. And we can't take action on this, so I'm just raising the issue, and I will probably ask that this be agendized for the December meeting. I would like to suggest that in the first quarter of next year, that the board facilitate, I'm going to call them workshops, town hall meetings, 2 of them. One looking outward, one looking inward. What I mean by looking outward, what can the board and the industry do on issues of technology, competitiveness, quality of service, availability of service? I think getting in a room and just kind of brainstorming and hearing what the industry thinks about that, maybe what the public thinks about that, maybe other industries may have a view they want us to consider. But my thought is to have a session like that, and I think with other than Member Thompson, a predominantly brand new board, that would be helpful, and with a new administrator, I think it would be helpful as well. Then the second one, looking inward, would be what should the agency be thinking about doing? Technology adoption internally, structure of the organization, how we do things, could we do them more efficiently with lower cost to the industry, more efficiencies, and what tools the agency would need for that, and also, receive constructive criticism from any quarters that might want to provide that. So I obviously can't take any action, food for thought, and I will kind of bring this back at the next board meeting to see if we want to proceed and set such dates. Is there anything else on agenda item 5? Hearing none, brings us to agenda item 6. This is the time set pursuant to the open meeting law for public comment. Any members of the industry or the public that wish to provide comments for consideration by the board, we cannot take action on such matters, and they should be restricted to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. Seeing no public comment, we'll go to agenda item 7, which is adjournment. There is no other business for us. I'll accept the motion.
I make a motion to adjourn. Sir. Member Rodriguez.
I will second that motion. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Well, I sure have a good time. I will not see you tomorrow. That was long. But I may hear you.
Okay.
I don't know.
I